So, hunger. It's kind of a pain in the ass, isn't it? This is probably the #1 reason that I have seen when it comes to individuals as to why they fail on their diets, as to why they start so strong and then 2, 3, 4 weeks they start to fall off, they start to have, one too many cheat days, and eventually that summer cut turns into a bit of an extended winter bulk. And I know it's very easy for us fitness YouTube people to just sit here and be like, it's simple, right? Willpower, motivation, you gotta go for the goal. It's not that hard, just do it. Weight loss, just move more and eat less. It's simple. Fuck you, you fucking piece of shit. No, sometimes it's not about simply working harder and wanting it more. Sometimes it's about changing your strategy and doing things smarter. Hunger is a prime example of an obstacle which, instead of just trying to smash your way through, why don't you just go around it and avoid it as much as possible? And in this video, I'm going to give you my 7 best tips for how you can do so. The first, and in my personal opinion, the most important tip when it comes to dealing with hunger, this is literally, in my opinion, more important than everything else in the video. So you could technically just watch this and then skip the rest of the video, but don't, because, I need the views. I am, of course, talking about ghrelin, aka the hunger hormone. There are 2 very critical hormones involved in signaling to your brain whether you are hungry or full. The first one is leptin, and this one's kind of known as the full hormone. I actually talked about this in my video about 2 weeks ago. Pretty much, leptin signals to your brain, hey, we're full, no more food needed. Unfortunately, ghrelin is essentially the exact opposite. Ghrelin tells your body, oh man, we're hungry, we need food, go eat something. And the biggest error I see when people look at hunger, and by definition ghrelin, is they think that it kind of it shoots up when you're hungry, and then it kind of just keeps on going. And it's not gonna go away until you actually get something in your stomach. That's not actually how ghrelin works. Ghrelin has actually been shown in scientific studies. They've tested this in people's blood and determined that ghrelin actually comes in waves. In fact, you can actually time it to things like people's schedule and their lifestyle in terms of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But if you were to actually last through that ghrelin spike, that hunger spike, and just put your mind on anything else, you can actually outlast hunger. This is my first and biggest tip. If you're doing dietary strategies, for example, intermittent fasting, where you're only consuming food for a certain period throughout the day, maybe a feeding window of 6 or 8 hours or something like that. And a lot of people do this by simply pushing back their first meal in the day. They don't have breakfast, or they have a late lunch. If you wake up in the morning when it comes to breakfast and lunch and you feel these ghrelin spikes, just get over it. Do anything in your power to get over it by simply putting your mind on something else. So if you're in the morning and you're kind of, you have that ghrelin spike in terms of hunger, and you want to fast and you want to diet through that, just, you walk into the office or you get into school, just start doing work immediately. I remember when I was working a 9-to-5 job, did the whole finance cubicle life, I would get to work, and immediately, for the first 2 or 3 hours of the day, I would get my best work done. I would answer emails. I actually used to when I would schedule meetings with my coworkers, I always purposely, even though I'm scheduling meetings today for tomorrow, I would always do them in the morning, because I know that if I can get myself busy, it's gonna make me put my mind on something else, and I can get over that ghrelin spike. Literally go to the gym, go outside, go for a walk. Do anything in your power to get your mind off of hunger, and I guarantee you, if you can just survive 30 or 60 minutes, that ghrelin or hunger spike will pass, and you won't be hungry again for another few hours until your next ghrelin spike, which will probably come around lunch or dinner, depending on when you had your first meal. One more thing I want to mention about ghrelin is that it actually has been shown to spike up and increase during times of stress. This may be one of the reasons why a lot of people out there actually stress eat. Your stress is literally causing you to get hungrier on a hormonal level. So if you're having issues with weight, especially if you're having issues with something like stress eating, try your best to live somewhat more of a stress-free lifestyle. Tip number 2 is simply put low calorie density foods. One of the reasons why you actually start to feel full, in addition to the actual calories and macronutrients and what you consume, is how much food you physically consume. How much physical expansion of your stomach is actually happening. It's literally the feeling of being full. And since fat loss is primarily driven by a calorie deficit, the less calories you can eat with the most amount of physical space, aka a low calorie density, the easier it will be for you to feel full while still eating a relatively low calorie diet, putting you into a calorie deficit, allowing you to burn body fat. Now I know some of you guys out there are thinking, Igor, please, this is so simple. All you have to do is just drink a lot of water and eat a lot of vegetables. It's so easy. And my response to that is, yes, technically you are correct, but at the same time, fuck you, do I look like a rabbit? Saying that in a video where I'm trying to help people curb their appetite, but at the same time live a normal life and eat food like a regular human being, you know, eating food that you actually somewhat enjoy, yeah, it's pretty much useless. But that being said, there are certain food selections you can make which are going to have a pretty significant difference. For example, look on the screen right now. This is pretty much, I went onto just various nutrition listings, and I pretty much got the calorie density, the calorie content of various carbohydrate, essentially just common side dish sources per 100 grams of whatever that food is cooked. So essentially what we're trying to do here is see how many calories there are per the actual physical amount of food. So if you eat, in this case, 100 grams of cooked rice, that is going to give you a pretty large amount of calories, same thing with pasta, as opposed to obviously if you're going to eat something like vegetables, which is very low in calorie density. But potatoes is a really big important factor in this case as well. Potatoes are awesome, guys. Sweet potatoes, whatever you want. I mean, some people say like, oh, one is healthier. No, they're pretty much the same thing. Who gives a shit? Potatoes are much less in calorie density than foods, you know, other common side dish sources such as rice or pasta. Quinoa is also pretty good. So if you're dieting and you're trying to consume an actual good amount of physical food and, you know, rice and pasta is just way too high in your calories, consider switching to lower calorie density alternatives such as potatoes. Алло, президент Путин, я сделал как ты хотел. Скоро вся Америка будет покупать наш чип-экспорт картошки. Да, водка тоже. Another example, which is extremely important because a lot of people tend to go over their calories, is simply your desserts. And once again, fruit salad, you know, fruits and vegetables is right there at the top. Yeah, the vegans out there watching this video are just like, yeah.
Oh, you can't? Jeez, that's terrible.
Yes! But then you have some terrible options such as obviously things like donuts, muffins, and one thing which is kind of surprising is on a calories per 100 gram basis, things like granola bars. I think the exact example I was using here was like some Nature Valley. Point is, like, some of these healthy, kind of like, you know, nutritious snacks, I mean, I'm not saying they're necessarily unhealthy in terms of their actual like contents and ingredients, but in terms of their actual content of things like calories, this can make it very difficult for you to lose body fat. Looking at solely calorie density, things like these healthy granola bars are actually higher and more fattening in some ways than things like donuts and muffins. Ironically, the McDonald's McFlurry actually came relatively low, but that being said, 100 grams of ice cream, it's not exactly that much. And then finally on our list, we have my personal go-to when it comes to desserts. This is My Protein's protein popcorn. Pretty good. If you guys are ever looking for some kind of sweet dessert, I definitely think that that is something worth giving a try. Point is, guys, I know there's a lot of variables to consider when it comes to selecting what foods you're going to be eating during your diet fat loss phase, but one of those variables I highly recommend you look at is calorie density. Number 3 is simply complex carbohydrates, otherwise known as polysaccharide. So when it comes to carbohydrates, there are actually multiple kinds. There are the sweet, delicious, awesome kinds, and then there's the kinds that taste like bird food mixed with cardboard. Guess which ones I'm recommending? So on an actual molecular scale, when it comes to carbohydrates, they can come in the form of monosaccharides, which are pretty much just very simple sugars. This is something like you'd find in something like added sugar. And then there's also disaccharides, which is not much bigger. It's simply two monosaccharides kind of like stuck together. It's almost like they're holding hands. And then you got polysaccharides, and as the name implies, poly meaning multiple, it's very, very long. But one of the big benefits to this, it takes a longer amount of time to actually break this down. So in essence, it actually gives you a more timed release of energy as opposed to that really quick, you know, sugar spike and immediate crash, and then you're hungry again in 45 minutes. Examples of polysaccharides would be anything mostly plant-based. We're talking like very starchy kinds of carbohydrates. Things like oats, buckwheat is very good. You know, rice, lentils, grains, you know, things... Again, things that are probably really good for you, but they don't exactly taste as good as a chocolate bar. Number 4 is simply to consume more protein. Now, for a lot of you guys out there who follow me and watch my channel, if you are like bodybuilders or strength athletes and you already consume a large amount of protein, this probably really isn't that big of a deal or an issue for you guys. But if you are watching this and you're more of a beginner, or you're not really interested in like crazy amounts of muscle mass, you just want to like lose weight, be healthy, you know, lose a few pounds, you're more of a regular, you know, average Joe Schmo, in your case, maybe a high protein intake is something which you aren't currently doing, but maybe you should. The reason behind behind this is that out of the three macronutrients, protein, carbohydrates, and fat, protein has actually been proven, both by anecdotal and actual scientific evidence, to be the more satiating of the three macronutrients. Pretty much, if you were to eat the exact same amount of calories, like let's say you were to eat 1,000 calories worth of pure protein, fat, and carbohydrates, protein would probably give you the most filling effect. And if you don't believe me, there actually was a study done on this exact concept. They took individuals and they pretty much made them consume a high protein or a high carbohydrate breakfast. Then afterwards, they actually tested their ghrelin levels. Remember ghrelin, the one we talked about literally like 5 minutes ago? Essentially, more ghrelin, more hunger. Well, the high protein group actually experienced less ghrelin secretions, and in doing so, that pretty much says less hunger. And another really important point, this one's less related to appetite, but still very related to protein. Out of the three macronutrients, protein actually has the highest thermic effect of food. For those of you guys that don't know what that is, essentially when you consume food, these three macronutrients, every time you actually metabolize and break it down, your body just doesn't do that using energy that comes from nowhere. You actually have to give a little bit of energy up in order to get more energy back. A good metaphor for the way I think of this is like, let's say you're starting a fire and you want a big, beautiful fire that's burning bright and strong. In order to do that, you still have to put a little bit of energy first by lighting a match. So you give up a little bit of energy in order to, light this wood and burn it and get a lot more energy. This is a similar case, but fat and carbohydrates actually have a somewhat low thermic effect of food, as opposed to protein, which can be as high as 25-30%. That's almost double. It's almost like because protein is kind of complex and difficult to break down, your body needs to expend energy in order to get more energy. It's almost like literally just breaking down protein is like, it's like its own exercise. Now, some of you guys are probably thinking like, great, Igor, thanks so much. I'm not a very good cook, and getting 200 grams of protein means I need to sit there and eat 2 pounds of this cold, sad, 3-day-old chicken breast, which pretty much tastes like I'm eating burnt rubber, so yay. Of course, in that case, the obvious advice is to simply get a protein supplement because it's faster, more convenient, and in many cases, a lot less expensive than conventional protein sources. My personal selection is MyProtein. So literally, you can pick up, this is the whey, although my actual favorite isn't this one, it's whey protein isolate. It's like stuck in my closet right now, I don't want to go get it, but it tastes fantastic. It's got like 23 grams of protein or something per 25 grams of powder with there's like no fat and like 1 gram of carb. And also it costs like 17 bucks for like 2.5 pounds or something, so it's really inexpensive. In my opinion, a really good option. As always, if you guys are interested, there's a link and a discount code down in the description box below, and that'll get you 20% off, so not bad. Tip number 5 is intermittent fasting. Now, this one I will admit is somewhat controversial because there are 2 reasons why a lot of people advocate, myself included, when it comes to intermittent fasting. The first one, this is the one where it's kind of controversial and questionable, and the science is it's kind of iffy, and that is the belief that intermittent fasting puts you into some sort of faster increased fat loss state, like the state where you get super physiological levels of fat loss. Pretty much like if you were to eat the exact same amount of food in an intermittent fasting or a regular meal protocol, you would lose more body fat and lose it faster in the intermittent fasting state. That is not exactly supported by the scientific evidence, and I can't really say that that's a reason why you should do it. However, a big reason why I do recommend intermittent fasting is because from a behavioral standpoint, it does make the process a lot easier. In my personal experience with my clients and with myself over multiple years of training and competition preps, I have noticed a significant increase in the ease of dieting and sticking to a calorie deficient diet when you are following an intermittent fasting protocol. There was one study done where they actually took individuals and over the course of a standard day, 24 hours, they put them into 2 different groups. One group ate a 6 meal per day meal frequency. So probably like breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, then a couple snacks in between. Pretty much they're eating a lot of meals, probably smaller meals, whereas the other group actually ate 3 meals per day. This is a very common tactic when it comes to intermittent fasting. A lot of people when they're intermittent fasting, they're only eating about 6, 7, 8 hour, this is 8-hour feeding window per day or whatever, however many hours you want to do. Everyone's a little different. They would probably have like maybe a big meal at the beginning and end of your fast and maybe like 1 snack in between. That's it, significantly less meal frequency. This study actually found that when it comes to fat oxidation, pretty much metabolism and how much body fat was burned, there's actually no difference. And that's why I mentioned just a minute ago that when it comes to actually, the ability to put you into this like super fat burning, fat loss mode, that there isn't really much scientific evidence behind that. It's kind of what people want to believe because they think that, oh, if I'm not eating food, I must be just burning like, food like an inferno. No, that's not the case. Daily macros, daily calories, at the end of the day, that's still what counts when it comes to burning body fat. But when it comes to making the whole process easier, in this actual case, the group eating 6 meals per day, the higher meal frequency group, did actually report higher levels of hunger. Number 6 is to simply get some help in the form of something like supplements or 0-calorie beverages. So if you were trying to diet down, maybe you're going through a period of increased hunger, you got that ghrelin spike, it's an hour long, it's kind of hard, you need some help, this is where things like this can come in. Really popular examples would be something like green tea, coffee, even like Monsters or Rockstars, those energy drinks. It's not as healthy, but screw it. It is very low calorie, pretty much 0 calorie, and it does work, so why not? But one thing that's common between all of these is caffeine, which leads a lot of people to believe that caffeine is an appetite suppressant. However, the evidence for this is it's actually a little shaky. One study actually compared caffeinated to decaffeinated coffee, and they did find that the decaffeinated coffee surprisingly did inhibit and decrease hunger more than the caffeinated coffee. It actually did so by increasing satiety hormones. But at the same time, you have another study which actually said different results. This one actually gave caffeine to individuals about 0.5 to 4 hours, essentially a few hours, give or take, before their meal. And they did find that they consumed significantly less intakes of energy, just a fancy way of saying pretty much they ate less food. That being said, guys, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Whether there is some fancy, ingredients in the green tea or the caffeine or the coffee or the black beans or, whatever it may be, or maybe it's just consuming a beverage in general, just any liquid, even water, because it causes your stomach to expand and this can somewhat suppress your appetite. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Go try your options and whatever works for you, keep doing it. And finally, guys, lucky number 7, eat more fiber. I know, I sound like your mom or your 3rd grade gym health teacher, but seriously, eat some more fiber. The average American diet is I think it's around 50% of the fiber that it actually should be at in terms of the recommended daily intake, so this is kind of a problem. So fiber is awesome because it's not actually fully digested. It's actually, if you were to do the calculation, each 1 gram of carbohydrates converts to about 4 calories. When it comes to fiber, it's kind of it's somewhat up in the air, but it's been estimated at being around 2, if not a little bit less. That's pretty cool because that means that you could essentially eat the exact same amount of fiber or regular, carbohydrates like sugar, and even though it's similar amount of actual food, one is half the calories. Part of the reason behind this is because there's actually 2 types of fiber, insoluble and soluble. Insoluble fiber, as the name implies, it's not actually really metabolized by your body. It kind of just passes right on through, and so essentially it's almost like free or non-existent calories. And when it comes to soluble fiber, it's metabolized, but it takes a while, and it just has so many other additional health benefits. For example, there's plenty of scientific research indicating that it helps with things like cholesterol levels, and also it has been documented to give you temporary inhibitions in hunger, and essentially it is a very satiating macronutrient. And in addition, there are other benefits which I think you guys should be taking advantage of, especially when you combine it with number 4 on this list, the high intakes of protein. Guys, thanks again for watching. As always, if you learned something new, leave this video a like, and if you did learn anything new, well, aren't you smart then?